They sowed the fields, they prayed for rain, but when harvest season arrived, there were no buyers, no contracts, no checks, only silence. In just 6 weeks, U.S. farm exports to China fell by 28%. At the port of Oakland, almond and dairy shipments dropped 40%. Now, hay exporters in Washington are laying off a quarter of their workers because the customers have disappeared. And Washington isn't bringing them back. This isn't just a dramatic headline. It's the quiet collapse of America's farm economy. Swift, silent, and approved at the highest levels. So ask yourself, how does the most powerful agricultural economy in the world end up begging for buyers, while its leaders cheer a trade war? U.S. sorghum exports to China didn't just decline, they were wiped out. In just 2 months, shipments plunged from 1.44 million metric tons in early 2023 to just 78,000 over the same period this year. Why? Because China's retaliatory tariffs, now over 125% on U.S. farm products, have made American grain not just too expensive, but irrelevant in its biggest export market. And yet, as storage silos overflow and sorghum prices crash with no backup buyers in sight, the U.S. government's response has been more symbolic than structural. The White House once promised that farmers would be winning, but now that promise reads more like a bad joke, especially as China turns to Brazil and Argentina for reliable, long-term grain deals. Which raises the uncomfortable question, if this wasn't the plan, why is no one stopping it? The pattern is obvious. Tariffs go up, demand vanishes, supply chains get rerouted for good. Before the trade war, China bought over 90% of exported U.S. sorghum. That link is now broken, and the damage goes far beyond just one crop. As China signs new deals across Latin America, the very structure that once gave the U.S. dominance in farm exports is quickly being dismantled. Bloomberg reports China's soybean imports from Brazil jumped 25% year over year, while U.S. soy futures dropped over 14% in the first quarter of 2025. These aren't short-term shifts. They're permanent changes in how global trade works. And if American leaders think tariffs can simply be reversed whenever they choose, they may not understand how global logistics really operate. At the port of Oakland, which is America's top hub for refrigerated farm exports, the slowdown is leading to layoffs, extra port fees, and growing economic pressure. Port Executive Director Christy McKenna warned that China's retaliatory slowdown is hitting more than just almonds, dairy, and beef. It's threatening the jobs of dock workers, truckers, and warehouse crews. Oakland runs on a 50-50 import-export split, making it especially vulnerable to these trade tensions. Port data shows that China accounts for 29% of Oakland's total trade, and the tariffs are targeting nearly every U.S. export category that moves through it. This isn't theoretical, it's real. Containers are sitting untouched, contracts are being canceled, and exporters are eating losses on shipments stranded at sea. Forage exporters report 68 canceled sailings since Trump's April 2nd tariff hike. According to the Agriculture Transportation Coalition, one Washington-based hay supplier laid off 25% of its staff in just 2 weeks due to canceled deals and unaffordable freight costs. A wood pulp exporter has 6,400 metric tons stuck in warehouses and 15 rail cars racking up extra charges while waiting for new instructions. One 9,000 metric ton shipment heading to China now risks being abandoned entirely. We can't absorb these shipping costs without taking a loss, one exporter wrote. And that's the deeper problem. How can low-margin bulk goods survive in a pricing system built for high-value luxury products? Under the new U.S. R-Ships Act, port fees now top $1.5 million per Chinese vessel. Bulk agriculture is exempt, but containerized eggs aren't. That's a major issue because containerized egg products, including beef, poultry, dairy, almonds, frozen goods, and even French fries, make up 55% of the value of all U.S. egg exports, according to USDA figures. Peter Friedman of the ATC told CNBC that failing to exempt containerized egg exports may end up hurting the most valuable part of the U.S. farm trade, just as global buyers are turning away. Yet despite repeated appeals, the USR has not said whether it's considering changes, so exporters are left doing the math. How many more shipments can they send at a loss before they stop exporting altogether? You know, these supply chain changes aren't weekend projects. They take years of new contracts, port adjustments, and financing agreements. Take Brazil, for example. It didn't become China's go-to soybean supplier overnight. It took 3 years of building up export volumes, government financial support, and upgrading ports. Now that China has secured these new suppliers, any U.S. attempt to re-enter that market, if it ever happens, would mean coming back with weaker bargaining power. Global agriculture doesn't move with political cycles. It reacts to long-term signals. And right now, according to traders who spoke with Reuters, Washington is sending the wrong message uncertainty, so international buyers are spreading their risks elsewhere. The real threat isn't just missing out on this year's deals, it's being erased from the spreadsheets that plan for the next 10 years. The White House has suggested another bailout to stop a wave of bankruptcies, but several farmer organizations, including the National Farmers Union and the American Soybean Association, are raising doubts. A bailout check can't reopen a closed shipping route, it can't fix a broken trade relationship, and it definitely can't rebuild trust with global partners. In Iowa, corn farmers told Bloomberg they're still planting even though they expect losses, because planting and losing money is slower financial death than not planting at all. In Kentucky, some farmers are questioning whether to harvest their crops at all. They're not focused on profit anymore, they're just trying to limit the damage. Despite all this, Washington keeps talking about financial relief packages. But what the farming industry is really asking for is simple access to markets. For the first time in years, top farming groups are backing new laws to limit the president's power to set tariffs. The National Farmers Union now supports a bill that would require Congress to approve major trade actions, saying that unchecked power has unfairly punished the agricultural sector. Peter Friedman told CNBC that this isn't a crisis in the making. It's already a full-scale crisis. It's rare to see this much unity in the industry, which shows how serious things have become. Even the American Farm Bureau Federation, normally a strong supporter of conservative agricultural policy, is now calling for limits, saying the economic damage from this trade war can't be defended anymore, not even by those who once backed it. Tariffs are supposed to protect local producers from cheap imports, but the reality farmers face is far different. ATC and USDA data show that retaliation from China, Canada, and the EU has crushed U.S. farm exports and flooded the domestic market with unsold goods. China's cancellation of a 12,000-ton pork order, its biggest since 2020, left U.S. producers with perishable stock and no one to buy it. On top of that, a new U.S. port fee rule could make things worse. It adds a $1.5 million charge per Chinese vessel, hitting containerized agriculture hardest. This category makes up 55% of U.S. agricultural export value. These aren't small hiccups. These are deep, lasting hits to the very farmers these tariffs were supposed to protect. Food prices are rising fast, but farmers aren't seeing any of the gains. While Calain Foods pulled in over $1 billion in profits during the 2024 egg shortage, smaller farms were hit hard with feed costs rising 20% due to tariffs on Canadian imports. According to Reuters, Trump's new wave of tariffs, some of the highest in 100 years, has pushed up food prices for consumers by nearly 18% compared to last year. Yet even as prices soar, farm incomes, especially for small and mid-sized producers, are falling. That contradiction points to a deeper problem. The power to set prices is now mostly in the hands of processors and distributors, not the farmers. Tariffs that were supposed to protect U.S. agriculture are instead boosting corporate profits while driving independent farmers closer to bankruptcy. U.S. food production is no longer linked to how well farmers do. It's now tied to global trade and large supply chains. Policies going back to NAFTA and later farm bills led to overproduction while relying on foreign markets to keep prices steady. But that system is breaking down. Bloomberg reports that, more than 40% of U.S. soy, corn, and wheat growers say they can't make a profit without stable export deals. As markets dry up and input costs jump, the damage isn't just to trade, it's to the whole system built on cheap land, endless growth, and constant demand. When 68 shipping routes are canceled in a single month and layoffs follow, that's not just a sign of trouble, it's a sign the system is breaking. During Trump's first term, his tariff war led to over $32 billion in farm bailouts, but it didn't fix the root trade problems. Now, his renewed tariffs have pushed China toward Brazil and led Canada to slap a 25% duty on U.S. agriculture, killing export momentum and putting long-term market access at risk. The Wall Street Journal reports that rural banks are seeing early signs of credit tightening, with more loan defaults in heavily farmed counties. Instead of building strength, this back and forth of trade wars and bailouts has created dependence without resilience. Trump promised strength, but what farmers got was instability, lost contracts, and fewer buyers. It's a tough situation, really. Back in the New Deal era, supply management helped stabilize prices with price floors, conservation programs, and food reserves that supported both incomes and access. Now, research from the University of Missouri shows that keeping those policies until 2020 would have cost 37% less than recent bailouts, while keeping exports strong. That's quite a difference, isn't it? If paired with an industrial strategy, like the CHIPS Act or climate-smart subsidies, tariffs can be effective, but only if they're part of a clear, coordinated policy that breaks up monopolies, builds infrastructure, and brings back farmer independence. It's all about working together, you know? Right now, that kind of plan doesn't exist. We're using old tools from the 1930s without a modern roadmap, and it's farmers who are paying for every wrong turn. So what happens when a trade war turns into a total collapse of trust between farmers and markets, between promises and policies, between Washington and the people who grow the food? That's not just a warning. It's already happening. And while tariffs make headlines, the real issue is this. When every ship gets rerouted, every deal falls apart, and every bailout dries up, who's still left standing in America's Farm Belt? Because what comes next won't be about tariffs. It'll be about survival. We're glad you're watching. Please like and subscribe. Stay tuned for more hot news from 3 Daily News. Catch you in the next one.